Okay. Yes. Excellent. I'll get this part on. There we go. All right. Is everybody okay? Did y'all have a good weekend? Yeah. Okay. On the whole. Francisco finally got to see Dune, so that's one more in the cult. All right. Okay, so you'll notice I asked you the other day, I had sent a little thing out saying about problem posing, a little worksheet I wanted you to do for today. I'm not going to take it up. I just kind of wanted you to do it so you'd already kind of have some stuff in mind. I'm going to go over a few things today, per usual. We'll start with questions, comments, concerns. See where we get with that. There we go. All right. All right, okay. El amor de la batalla de Shala, la sala montón de botón de papá. Okay, so I'll start off with questions, comments, concerns per usual. Now I want us to start working on problem posing, so we learn better how to problem pose. You got an assignment due tomorrow night before 11:59. If you've already done it, but those that haven't, don't let time get away from you, because you do need to watch a video if you haven't watched it yet. Wednesday, read the first book of Plato's Republic. Now, what I've done is I've given you 3 ways to access the Republic, okay? One is an EPUB, which you can use with iBooks or almost any kind of e-text reader. One is a Mobi. Here, let me show you. One is a Mobi, so that you can, put it on your Kindle. So this is an EPUB, this is a Mobi, and if you don't want to go to any of that trouble, you just want to read it online, and you can just click this and go directly to where it's at online. Okay, this translation is about 120 years old. It's still a really good translation, and part of us going through this will be me kind of making little corrections while you're reading it and thinking about what Plato's talking about, so that it maybe makes a little more sense. I think the sections that we're looking at will not suffer too much from the fact that the person who did this translation was a Victorian scholar, and so he wanted to sort of downplay a little bit the homoerotic content. This dialogue doesn't really suffer from that as much as other dialogue. Okay. So what you want to do is read book 1 of the Republic, not the introduction by Professor Jowett, but go directly to the first book, right? So here's an introduction and analysis. Let me give you a great secret that I learned when I was in the Great Books program at the University of North Texas. Never read the introductions to a book. Ever read them until you've read the book. Especially when they're translated, especially when they're exhaustive. See, this is all analysis. If you read this before you read the book, even though it's his translation, if you read this before you read the book, he's already told you what you're reading. You don't have any reason to read the freaking text. So when you're reading it, you'll just agree with what he said. Especially since he's the one who's actually bringing it to you from ancient Greek into contemporary English, right? So don't ever read the book's introduction until you've read the book. Then you can go back and read the introduction. And a lot of times you'll find that you disagree with the introduction, which you wouldn't have done if you'd read the book after you read the introduction. You would have agreed with it, right? So in Great Books programs, that's a big no-no usually, okay? So what you want to do then is go right down here to book 1. And really all we're doing here when we talk about books in Plato, in a long text like Plato's like this, really all this is that it reached the limit that you could bind a book in the ancient world. So it doesn't actually stop at what we would think of as a logical stopping place. Right? It's like, oh, it stopped at book 1. Maybe book 1 might work that way, but all the rest of them, they all end right in the middle of the conversation. And it's like, okay. And that's because they got to about as far as you could go with the text, right? Because how did they do it back then? I said bound. They didn't bind them. They were rolled out parchment, or they were rolled out papyrus, right? So there's only so much length to a papyrus, right, before it begins too big to be able to keep it rolled up, right? So there was kind of a standard length for a large work. And also an interesting aspect of this, and why people still, like my nephew who's getting his PhD in classics at UT right now, he's still involved, that they still have disagreements sometimes about what Plato actually wrote, because if you have a limited source of your paper, which is papyrus, which is not the same as regular paper, it's expensive. You want to use every bit of it that you can use, but you can't use both sides. So what did they do? There are no spaces. It's just one long line of Greek letters after another long line of Greek letters. And if you don't know Greek, then you don't actually know how to read the text. Obviously, if you don't know Greek, you can't read Greek text. But I'm just saying, if you don't know Greek at all, you can't even distinguish what the words would be. Sometimes they began to develop, like what we use as a semicolon was their question mark, right? But generally, there's not a lot of those. So you'll still find that scholars, when they're going through this stuff, they'll be like, well, this scholar said this and this scholar said this, but obviously these words are not being broken up the right way. Okay, that's not something you have to worry about. That's just, trivia that I want to do. It's not just going to be one huge English text that you're supposed to go through and try to figure out what the words are, right, with no spaces. So that's all going to be there for you. So what you want to do is go down to book 1, whether you're in the Mobi, the EPUB, or you're doing it online, go to book 1. We don't read the introduction until we've read book 1. Then you can go back and read Professor Jowett's introduction, though I would actually tell you not to read any of this until you've read all 10 books. Okay. All right, so I want you to read this book 1. And this is what book 1 would look like if you click to it, whether you're in the EPUB, the Mobi, or online. It's going to say book 1. It's going to say the people that are in the dialogue, right? And then it's also going to give you a list of other people that are there that aren't talking, but they're watching. Okay. Okay. All right. And now one nice thing about Professor Jowett is that he lets you know who the main people are that are talking in the side. And he also gives you a little extra, like, okay, so this is the equestrian torch race they're talking about. Here's the gathering of friends at Cephalus's house. So these are liner notes. And older professors a long time ago, they used to do this sort of thing to help students run through the text quickly and get an idea of what's actually going on so that you can go back and read the text already with the kind of outline. So you remember how I told y'all at the beginning of our course, a great way to read philosophy that's written in essay format. This is a dialogue, so it's a little different. But a great way to read philosophy that's written in an essay format is start with the first paragraph, read the last paragraph. Go back, read the first paragraph, then speed read through the first sentence of every paragraph and read the last paragraph, then go through and read it. And if you do that, you get the gesture of what the person's talking about. It's kind of like putting an outline in your brain. So you can follow along a lot easier. And despite the fact it seems like you would be adding time, it actually makes the reading go faster. Now, what I would suggest with this, don't read the introduction. Stop. Don't read the introduction. But I wouldn't, I would say go through really quickly and look at the liner notes, because that'll give you an outline of, okay, what the hell's happening in this. Then go back and start reading, right? You cannot read it though the way that I just said. Read the liner note things to kind of get the outline. Then you just have to kind of read it because it's kind of like reading a play. Except you will be surprised to learn, supposedly, that this entire book, which normally is printed in English about this thick, is supposedly just the recall of Socrates telling somebody about what happened the day before. So it's just all out, supposedly out of his memory. Which we think is probably, that can't be the case. But actually back then they had ridiculous memories because they didn't write a lot. And when you don't write a lot, you learn techniques to remember shit. Right? Okay. Write or record, I guess would be a better way to put it. Okay, so now that I've kind of gone through all that, questions, comments, concerns before we get into problem posing. Yes, ma'am.
Did you get my email?
Oh, did you send me an email?
Yeah, it's just about next week because I was confused about your dates for like which days are in person and which days are.
Yeah, oh no, I didn't get that email, but I was actually going to say something about that. So next week, because it's Thanksgiving week, we'll meet in person on Monday, and then I'm going to have online class on Wednesday. I am not expecting you to attend the online class on Wednesday, but it would be awesome if you at least try, and if you don't, at least take a look at whatever's posted after. So, okay. Then the Monday after Thanksgiving will also be online. So I'm trying to give everybody a chance to make sure they're not deathly ill before they come back from hanging out with their family. That you didn't catch some shit from your little cousin who's a petri dish running around putting their snotty fingers all over everything. I love kids. I know that's not. Okay. Oh yeah, so that's it. And then is that the only two that I have? Yeah.
Is there a way to watch them when they want to?
If you're going to be out of town on Monday, I will. The secret there is the link that I have there for those two class days. That's the same link I always use. So if you want to like come in on Monday because you can't be here because you're traveling, I think you're traveling. People that are traveling for the holiday, you can just zoom in if you want to. Okay, and just kind of maybe let me know so that I'll be kind of paying attention to make sure to let you in. Okay. And y'all have my phone number, so if I'm not letting you in, text me. I mean, I should, but just in case. Right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Yeah. I'm feeling good about today. Because today's where we begin something that's a little bit less me narrating at you and me learning from you by us beginning the process of problem posing. So let me get back over here to my keep the ADHD boy on task. So what we're doing with problem posing, we're asking from our thrownness, right? Our thrownness is our forsakenness, is our, we're thrown into a world that's already underway. We have to examine ourselves, examine our situation, explore our circumstances, right? And when you do that, kind of keep in mind that if philosophizing is the willingness to be uncertain and the will to ask questions, then you should really think of philosophizing or thinkering as developing the art of asking questions. Okay, especially when you're in unfamiliar territory. I would hope it's a stereotype, but it's so true from at least so many things that I've seen in my life that men tend to not stop and ask for directions when they get lost. Now, that's become a little less because they can kind of like, ask GPS if somebody's not. They can ask Siri, or they can ask Alexa, or they can ask Google, how do I get where I need to go? I'm lost. But generally, men tend to not they get into unfamiliar territory and they don't stop and ask questions. They just kind of keep barreling through. I'll find a way through. I'm the grandchild of pioneers. I'll get there. So, you know, this is just something to keep in mind. We're in unfamiliar territory a lot. So we should always be ready to ask questions, right? All right, now problem posing. This is both an attempt to make what we're doing less about me narrating at y'all or narrating to y'all, and more about sort of learning together by this problem posing exercise. The problem posing a la Freire is not necessarily a rigorous method, right? All he's trying to do when he talks about problem posing is just get people to pose the problems that seem pertinent to their lives. What I have found, of course, is that we have a tendency in our fetishism of security to need to get started with some kind of method, right? This is dangerous because Freire, so I want y'all to keep that in mind, right? Freire says you don't want to develop hard, unchanging techniques and methods because you need to respond to the flow of your situation. So what I'm doing today is kind of like Jasper's giving us a sort of basic description we can start from, right? It's like you get this method, take it and turn it into your method. Don't just keep doing it for the rest of your life the way I'm showing you. I mean, assuming you keep trying to do it. Okay. All right. So learning how to ask the best question to get others to lovingly struggle with us and not end up in horrible shouting matches like two trolls fighting over space under an influencer bridge. This is really to get you into real dialogue with people. This is not Steven Crowder's convince me I'm wrong kind of shit. All right. This is to really get you to want to develop a question that will open up other people, even people who you know disagree with you politically or religiously or what the hell ever, to actually have a real conversation. That's very difficult. Americans don't actually like confrontation. I mean, it may not seem like it, but we're very, I know, we're very confrontation averse on the whole, right? One of the reasons that a lot of issues like homophobia and transphobia, xenophobia, racism and misogyny kind of just keep going along is because there's this thing called the niceness quotient. That civil discussion has to be nice, right? There has to be a place where you start off on a ground where you accept each other, but you each have a position, right? And you have to find a way to enter into a discussion, but at some point there still has to be push and pull. It's loving struggle, not niceness. Don't just go along to be nice, right? This is the way that guys will not really be paying attention to the fact that one of their best friends is a horrible date rapist because they don't want to listen to the stuff that gives it off. And they certainly don't want to be that asshole who points out, hey man, maybe you shouldn't be, you know, messing with her. She's kind of drunk. That's not nice. Get in the way not to cock block your bro. Right? Loving struggle. Okay. So, all right. And so here then we want to recall the Socratic values. The unexamined life is not worth living. Right? Self-examination begins in looking at our material conditions, not just material things around us, but our sociocultural structures as well. You have to remember that the decisions that are made to build like this school, right? This is a materially sound place on the whole, right? It's made out of napkins, but there are a lot of social decisions that go into utilizing this matter, that go into architecturally constructing it and putting it in the way that it is, then once it's made, to furnishing it and having the rooms a particular way, right? So material conditions are not just the actual material, they're how society decides the material should be arranged. Okay, so material conditions are also social conditions. You'll notice that very rarely will you ever sit down in any classroom in comfortable chairs. I mean, quasi, these are about as close as I've seen, right? But you don't get the really nice ones, usually. And even if you do, they're usually old and they're just been put in there, right? So there's a whole social theory. They want to keep you awake. They want to keep you doing your thing. And when you fall asleep, if somebody falls asleep in my class, I know that I can pull it. I've seen Matthew's face. I know that I can. But the point is, somebody falls asleep in my class, I'm like, they must really be exhausted because I've never been in a class that's comfortable. You have to be. Okay. All right. So material conditions have to do with their sociocultural structure. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take you through some questions. I want you to answer them on a piece of paper. I'm not going to take this up, but I want you to answer them. We're going to spend a little bit of time getting you to examine your sociocultural condition. Okay? I don't want to trigger anybody. Some of the questions might be a little personal, but again, I'm not going to take them up. I want you to be honest to yourself. Okay? All right, and also let me make these bigger here. I find that it works better if you make sounds. Okay, we should strive to avoid being secure in our social performance just because we happen to be secure. The following queries challenge where there are areas where you may be accepting the privilege of security or even lost in the sauce of fetishizing security. Okay. Do you have a sacred tradition? If yes, which one? If no, do you consider yourself an atheist or an agnostic? Again, these are just quick answers for yourself. I'm not going to take them up, so you can go like Y, C if you're a Christian, or N, A if you're an atheist, right? You have a political affiliation. If yes, which one? If no, do you consider yourself an independent, or do you just not care? Just, a political position. Some people may not think so, but it's definitely a political position. All right. Do you obsess over money? If yes, why do you think you obsess over money? If no, why do you think you do not obsess over money? Oops, there. All right. Are you intelligent? If yes, in what way? If no, why do you think so little of yourself? You'd be surprised how many people in college will say, I'm really not intelligent. Are you intelligent? If yes, in what way? If no, why do you think so little of yourself? Remember, intelligence can be a lot of things. It can be book learning, it can be emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence. So, let's go down a little bit here. Do you have a significant other or partner? If yes, are you in love, or is this just to keep the bed warm? And I really want you to be honest. Again, I'm not taking this shit up. Be honest with yourself. Maybe you've been with them for 5 fucking years. I don't know. But you will not be staying with them. Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. Where are you at here?
I'm at 3 right now.
Okay. You don't have to obsess over it that much. Just say yes or no. And again, I mean, yeah, obviously it's the same. Why do you think a lot about money? Let me do this here, actually. That way we can have it on the same page. Okay, do you obsess over, oh, where am I at? All right, do you have a significant other? If yes, are you in love? Or is this just to keep the bed warm? If no, do you want one? If no, do you believe yourself an aromantic or an asexual? Does anyone need me to explain what either of those are? Yes. Clinton. All right, an aromantic is somebody who just really doesn't give a rat's ass about romance or about relationships. But they do like to have sex. An asexual is someone who has no sexual drive. Or as we would call it, drive. I mean, I don't necessarily know this case. Technically, I think I'm an asexual, but what's that mean? Yeah.
Would you say, based on the way you say aromantic, most teenagers between the ages of, well, the puberty ages,
It changes.
yeah, are aromantic?
No, actually, I would say they tend towards thinking they're supposed to be. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of like what they're constantly fed by everybody. Do y'all realize, though, that romance always ends in tragedy? That there's actually nothing. Romances are not, the whole idea of a romantic comedy is an oxymoron. If you look at the history of literature, romances always end with somebody dead or two people utterly incapable of being together because they're in a marriage they can't get out of. A romance, in the classical sense, is a knight who's madly in love with the queen, and once a year she kisses a handkerchief and gives it to him. That's it. So aromantic in the broader sense simply means you just don't care as much about the cultural trappings of relationships and stuff like that. But I think that most teenagers, because when you're a kid, you're constantly inundated with structures and things, right? So I think a lot of kids believe they're supposed to be romantic. That's why all those crazy prom proposals. It's like, why did you just spend $500 on a freaking prom proposal? Yeah.
I would just say it's a bit also confusing when you grow up, like especially when you're like in your 20s, because you discover that when you're trying to find what's romantic or not. I'll speak for myself, like raised like a girl, so awkward and all that. But I was reading books and more discovering the stuff. You see that romance can not only be flowers and things, also be gestures. It's just that you have internalized all that thing that the movies show, the Valentine. It's like, okay, so right after that,
It's so much. After a little while, it's like you close the deal. Why do you have to keep buying the love?
right? Like,
The real thing is, hey, guess what I did? I washed all your clothes while you were gone. Oh, wow. I folded them and I put them away in a way you never would. So not only do I make you happy with my romantic gesture, but I get your shit out of my way. So, see, once you've been with someone like I have for 17 years, you get to the point where you're like, this is romance, being honest and doing nice things for each other. Okay, so how do you identify your sexual orientation? Again, I'm not taking this up, right? So sexual orientation in this sense would be, it kind of follows from the last question. You could be asexual, heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, pansexual. These are all the different kinds of sexual orientations that there's a lot more. Clinton, you're fixing to ask a question.
No.
Okay. I thought maybe you were going to ask me if pansexual was somebody who's obsessed with cookware.
I'll put that down if that's it.
We've heard you talk about your Dutch oven. Okay, so, right, so how do you identify your sexual orientation? And you can actually put a question mark there. This is for your self-examination, right? How do you identify in your gender presentation? This is for your, some people, when I ask this question, it's the first time they've ever asked themselves.
No.
Huh?
I don't understand the question.
Well, the question, now this is another thing. Okay, so gender presentation would be, do you identify with presenting yourself the way that you were assigned at birth? Or do you, right? So I don't identify with my gender presentation in the sense that everybody looks at me and is like, oh, that's a big fat man. And most people. And I'm actually just joking. But right? But I've come to see myself to not identify with that presentation. I see myself as gender queer. I'm not saying that you should. I'm saying, have you really ever asked yourself? I never asked myself that until a year and a half ago. I thought that I was really progressive. I came up with these questions 4 years ago. And still, it was only a year and a half ago that I myself, in an honest self-examination, decided I'm not a man, I'm genderqueer. Right? I mean, if other people see me that way, I mean, it kind of works in my favor. I'm old, I'm white, and I look like a man. So that works in my favor to a certain extent, right? So I totally understand also why some people get confused, because in this regard, it's not just man and woman. There's so much more that might be there. Bisexuals, going back up to sexual orientation, bisexuals and genderqueer people or gender fluid people do not look necessarily like something you can just point a finger at and say, oh, that's what that is, right? I saw a TikTok this weekend with this person walking into a place, and they were, and they were like, is that a bisexual? Is that a bisexual? Is that a bisexual? Is that bisexual? They don't look like a bisexual. And it was just a person dressed in regular clothes. But it was to make the point that you can't just look at someone and know their sexual orientation. You also can't just look at someone and actually know how they identify their gender. Their gender presentation might be confusing, right? Yeah, Vanessa.
Yeah, just reminded me of this podcast I'm listening to, and it was about the Republican and Democrats. And I didn't know that actually Caitlyn Jenner is Republican.
Oh, God.
It's funny because I always thought that maybe it's what everybody thought, that the LGBTQ was more liberal and more Democrat.
No. There's a lot of racism in the quilt bag community. There's a lot of misogyny. There's a lot of misogynoir. There's a lot of different things. That doesn't mean Republicans necessarily are that way. That just means that when you look at a person who happens to be queer,
You automatically think.
yeah, it doesn't mean that because there are a lot of, they're called log cabin Republicans. That's gay Republicans. The log cabin Republicans are gay Republicans. And Caitlyn Jenner is extremely conservative, right? What you want to do in that kind of situation is what you do in any of these situations. Just because a woman is a woman doesn't mean that she's a feminist. Just because a trans woman is a trans woman doesn't mean that she's not conservative. Right? So that's an important issue there. Okay, so who in the world have you hurt the most? Who in the world have you hurt the most besides yourself, probably?
Both physically and emotionally.
Yeah, let's not make a distinction, because they actually, sometimes the psychological has more impact for decades than the physical. Who in the world have you hurt the most? Other than your mother when you decided not to become a doctor. Talk. Who in the world have you helped the most? Who in the world have you hurt the most? Who in the world have you helped? How have you disappointed yourself? Just pick one. 'Cause I'm sure everybody in here has disappointed yourself more than a few times. If you're human and not an android. To you, which is better, cats or dogs? And don't say either, or don't say they're both awesome. Pick one. If you have someone was like pushing you against the wall and saying, pick, which is better, cats or dogs? I know it sounds weird. What's your favorite attribute about yourself? And where do you plan to go in life? Okay, so this is, again, I'm not taking this up. This is really preliminary to your final exam, because your final exam is where did you come from? That's one essay. Where do you show me something about yourself? Teach me who you are, where you come from. That's stuff I know all those books like shit. The thing that y'all can teach me about more than anything else is how to see the world from your age bracket and your experience. Right. And then also the second part of your final exam is creating basically a vision board collage of where you want to go in life. Told you it's going to be as self-helpy as possible. Now, I sent y'all this little doohickey the other day. And asked you to go through it and come up with 3 things for which you're grateful. 1 problem you see with the world. How the things you're grateful about are related to the problem itself, and then come up with a question. Okay? And I know some of y'all did it. I know some of y'all didn't. Right? No accusation. J'accuse, Lois. Did you do it? Jacques. Yeah, no, so it's fine. Y'all know me well enough to know that I'm not going to fall all over myself in an apoplectic fit if you didn't do something I asked you to do. So I'll just give you a 0. There's no grade for this. It's not even got a submission. It's just download it and do it to help you think through stuff. Now, are there people who did do it? Isabel did it, Francisco did it, Adriana, Andrew, and Paca. Okay, good. Nice little mixture here. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a problem posing exercise. The way I used to do this a long time ago was to get people to come up to the board and write it. But, let's not do that now. I'll just let you tell me what your question is. So here's what we're going to do. The process of doing this exercise was to come up with a question that you would want to use to have that to develop that loving struggle, right? And I've said already that philosophizing is not about answers. Philosophizing is about becoming better at questions. The better your questions are, right, the more you can actually accomplish in your discussions or your research, depending on what kind of thing you're trying to do, right? All right. So going back over here. Oh, yeah, I didn't get that off. All right. So basically what we're going to do is you're going to come up and not come up. You're going to tell me what your question is. And so that's going to be pose the question. And then you're going to reflect on the question, which is basically, why is that your question? And then you're going to assess we're all going to assess the I hate using this word, efficacy of the question, right? How effective is the question? Okay. Then we're going to compare and find common grounds and then repost. This is the system I'm talking about. So you got the little worksheet. That's a nice way to do it because a lot of times what people do in their reactions to somebody like me who's so fucking critical about everything is to be like, you're so negative. You're telling me this just like, then it was like, hey, you're so negative. Everything you say, negative, negative, negative. If I ever call you out by name almost entirely, I'm making up for it. Okay, so, but the point is, I like for people to begin with what you're praying. Besides God, besides country, besides Texas, besides family, besides your pets, besides your friends, not necessarily others. Then you're grateful. That's usually how I ask you to begin that other exercise. Then I say, what's the matter with you? And the basic idea there is you look at the things you're grateful for and you look at what you think's the matter with the world and you try to come up with a narrative of how those three things that you're grateful for are related to the problem. All right? And then after you do that narrative, you come up with a question. Okay? And that question's the beginning. Now, everything that we're going to do between now and the end of the semester is going to be talking about Plato and Socrates and the art of questioning for dialogue. And then these problem posing exercises where we will work together to make your questions better. Right? Clinton was surprised to find out on Wednesday that my question, how do we educate each other, I worked on for 3 years to get it down to 4 words. Started off almost like a paragraph. It's a paragraph on question. Right? To get a good dialogue going with people who are willing to actually converse and struggle together, it helps to have a question that sort of makes sense, right? So what we're going to do then is we're going to pose the question. I think I'm going to start with Francisco. We're going to pose the question, and then we're going to reflect on it. That means you're going to tell us why that's your question. Okay. Then I'm going to ask Isabel and Andrew to ask you for clarification on certain terms of the question. Okay, this is going to be the way that right? We're not here to answer your question. We're here to perfect your question. And that comes by having your accomplices and colleagues help you to refine. Okay, again, it's the art of question asking, not the art of question answering. Okay. And then after we've done that, I'm going to ask Isabel and Andrew to do the same thing. And we'll go through these steps again. And then at the end of it, we'll begin with Francisco. I might go ahead and get popular about this too. Francisco, ask you to find what you think is common to all three questions. Okay. And then what I want you to do is I want all of y'all to go and repose the question. Right? Not today, but come up with use the insights you got from the question of your colleagues to make a better question. Make sense? Okay. All right. So what we're going to do here is, Francisco, I'm just going to ask you what your question is. Do you mind if I put your name here? No. Okay. I mean, I've already said who it is. I guess I should have asked you ahead of time. Francisco. Okay, what's your question, buddy?
How will technology make us dehumanize each other more and more in the future?
All right. Now, the first thing we do is reflect on a question. The first reflection is, why is this your question?
Because of three things I was
Mhm.
grateful for was health. I had to pick two activities, so I picked hiking and fishing, which is outdoors,
Mhm.
and then books. And then
Mhm.
the problem I see is a disconnect.
Okay.
And how I related all three of those together with disconnect is that we're all on the phone or watching TV, and we're really not
Mhm.
connected with each other anymore. We're rather, even though we're on the same room, we could all just be on our phones. instead
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like talking with each other.
No. That's right. That's great. Wonderful. So this is the basics of it, right? Share a question. Give us a reflection on why. He says it's because he sees this disconnection that's beginning to accomplish. It's beginning to happen. Now, I think I pointed out Isabel and Andrew. Adriana, did you also have yours done today? Yeah, and then Paco, you had one. So I'm going to actually ask the four of y'all for the moment. What's at issue in this question? Which, first of all, what's at issue? It doesn't have a question mark. Shh. Good God. All right. What's at issue? And when I say what's at issue, I mean this. I'm not going to literally ask you to come up with a different way, but I could ask you, how do you mean how? That's what's at issue. How do you mean how? And then, so it's like any of these words in here could make anyone else go, I'm not sure, this is being a good Socratic. I'm not really sure how you're using this word. And then what we'll do is we'll get a little clarification. All right, so let's start with Isabel. Put one word in there that makes you go, Okay, how do you mean technology? So we're going to kind of just go through with everybody first and then let you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bold that word so we know that it's a word in question. Adriana, what do you see up here in this question when you look at it? Is there anything in the question that makes you go, I'm not sure how Francisco means that? Will. Okay. All right. Andrew? Future? Okay. Paco? Dehumanize. Okay. Now here's the thing. Obviously, these words are not words that are unfamiliar to us, right? They're words we know. But remember, the reason Socrates ended up being killed by the Athenians is they kept asking people simple questions. Like, how do you mean justice, Mr. Judge, who judges people's lives? How do you mean justice? How do you mean courage, Mr. General, who sends people to their death fighting in wars? How do you mean that, right? So this is the kind of thing Socrates did. So he was always like, if you use a word, that word is something that you should be able to elucidate. Okay. So we'll start here with technology. I think it's the one this Bill brought up, right? How do you mean technology?
Kind of like social media and being on the internet.
Okay. So what I'm going to do here is go technology and say something like internet, social media. Okay. All right. And now, how do you mean will?
Kind of like going to.
Okay.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah. To going toward. So it's a futural aspect. Okay. And then, of course, now it gets to the future part. How do you mean future? Do you mean long term, short term?
Well, I originally put it 5 to 10 years. But
Okay.
it'd be like 20, 25.
All right. So when you say the future, you mean where we are going in so many years, right? Okay, good. And then the last is dehumanize.
Like not having a connection with your fellow
Okay.
human being.
Unconnected to others and their humanity. Okay. Now, what's the purpose of doing this? The purpose of doing this is to say the first words that we come up with usually won't mean the same thing for everybody we talk to, right? And you'd be really surprised at what an entire room of people thinks technology is, right? So here, for the purposes of your query, you might actually want to say the specific kind of tech, like social media, always being online, always being connected, right? How that would work out, right? So one of the things we're wanting to do, sometimes what happens is before you get to a short question, you make a really long question, and then you see the gesture you're really trying to get at, and you can pare away the stuff that doesn't matter, right? So here's something I would have asked if it were me. I don't really have a lot of experience with this, like y'all do, but I would have asked, how do you mean us? Do you mean all humans? Do you mean Americans? Do you mean Texans? Do you mean North Texans? Do you mean men? Do you mean, what do you mean us?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Probably Americans.
Okay. All right. So just be thinking a little bit about how you might repose the question, but don't spend a lot of time on it because now we're going to move over to Isabel. Okay, and then you'll be the first person to get to ask Isabel what's at issue for you in her question. Okay. Isabel, it's okay if I put your name up here, right? All right. What about your question? Or how about your question?
My question is, how do we become aware of the ego?
And don't y'all be going and trying to perfect your questions before we get there. Just keep them the way they are, Paco. Okay? Like I already tell how you're doing.
I'm not touching it.
Okay. How do we become aware of the ego? Is that what you said, right? Okay, now, all right. So now we go back and it's reflect on the question. Why this question? What's the issue?
Okay, well, the three things that I said I was grateful for were life, love, and other beings. And so then I said the problem was the ego. And basically, the reason that I connected them is because I said that like love and the ability to connect with other beings, like, because the unconscious mind is what prevents people from recognizing how privileged we are to be alive in the first place and how we ability to connect with others.
Okay. So how do we become more aware of the ego? Francisco.
Aware.
Okay. Aware. All right. And Andre? Adriana, I'm sorry. I don't want to say Andre. Adriana. We. All right. Good. Picking up. Learning. All right. And Andrew. Okay. And Paco.
Ego.
And I would ask you how you mean the. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so we'll start here. We have Francisco, you said aware, right?
Yes.
Okay, aware. How do you mean aware?
I guess recognize it within ourselves.
Okay. recognize, see it in ourselves. Okay. And then Adriana said we, right? You asked about we. What do you mean by we? Who? Who is this we? Is there a mouse in your pocket? That's what my old professors used to ask me. Humans. So the we here is all humans, not just Americans. Okay. And Andrew said become. How do you mean become?
I guess begin to.
Okay. Now I'm actually doing something here. I just realized something I forgot to do. That's a part of this structure. And I'll do it with Adriana. That I forgot to do it with y'all, but most people get a kick out of this part. So I'll do it when we get to it in a second. We become for you then means to begin to. Okay. Okay. What about ego? How do you mean ego?
Wait, begin, not begin.
Oh. There we go. How do you mean ego?
I guess the unconscious mind that creates division.
The unconscious mind, you pack a lot into the ego. The unconscious mind that creates division. Okay. Interesting. All right. So here's the thing that I forgot to do. Actually, what I would always do after we come up with the question up here is to have you read the question back out loud so you hear it yourself in your own voice. So I forgot to do that. So we'll start it with Adriana. Okay. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and move down to Adriana. Adriana, what's your question? Is it okay if I put your name here? Did I spell that right, or has it got two N's? That's right. Okay.
How does desiring affect the world?
How does the
Desiring?
how does desiring affect you? Okay. Now, here's what I want you to do. Read this question out loud.
How does desiring affect the world?
Read it out loud again, but louder. Not scream, just be louder.
Oh. How does desiring affect the world?
Okay, read it one more time, but slowly and louder.
How does desiring affect the world?
Okay. I'm sorry I didn't give y'all an opportunity to do that little bit of fun exercise, but it actually does help in a lot of ways because it makes you hear it again in your own voice. Right? All right. Adriana, reflect for us. Why is this your question?
They don't have to do anything with like the first three questions you asked.
That's fine. Yeah, you can just tell us why this is your question. You don't have to say this is how it fits into the other assignment if you want.
Because I put two problems, like one of the problems was no self-control and desiring, and then that's how
Okay. All right. So that's pretty simple. All right. So let's go ahead and start with Andrew. Andrew, what stands out for you as an issue, at issue for you when you hear this question or see this question? World. Okay. And Paco, what about you? Okay. And Isabel? Not a lot left there, but Francisco?
How?
I knew sooner or later somebody'd start on the pronouns. Okay. How? All right. So first we'll start with Andrew. Andrew, you said world, right? Okay. All right. How do you mean world? You mean all the human population or everything? Okay. World, all life. Okay. And then how do you mean affect? The outcome? Oh, you actually mean effect. So the effect is the outcome. Affect is the thing that's done. So either one of them is, I mean, they basically mean the same thing, the outcome. Okay, so affect and effect, outcome. All right. And how do you mean desiring?
To want.
To want. Okay. And then how do you mean how? When you hear you know what these words are called? They have an actual grammatical name. They're called interrogative pronouns. That means you use their pronouns that you use in a sentence. That's a question. Interrogative is simply the Latin word for a question between people or something. Right? So this interrogative pronoun, how do you mean how? The way. Okay, good. Or the process maybe. Good. All right. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you know, and it's been a while since I did all this face to face. If we're doing this and the people I've been calling on don't have a problem, or they don't point out the thing you have an issue you're wondering about, y'all can also raise your hand and be like, I don't know what the hell Francisco or Adriana mean by this.
No, it's when she was trying to explain the world, I believe the word used was everything. But you specified all life.
Oh, well, see, that's just me doing. I'm just being an authoritarian bastard. I'm sorry. I'm mad with power. Everything. Actually, it does. I mean, it's not just like, yeah, I think that's actually important. Thanks, Clint. You always catch these little things. I appreciate it. It's very important. Okay, so let's see here. All right, Andrew, you want to do it? Okay. And it's okay if I put your name on here. All right. So long as you guess.
My question was, will the new generation rules fix the indifference of the world, or is the problem you get partially?
Okay. Will the new generation be able to fix the what?
Fix the indifference of the world. Or is the problem you get partially?
Okay. Awesome. So read the question one more time for everybody.
Will the new generation be able to fix the indifference of the world, or is the problem rooted far too deep?
Okay. Read it slower.
Will the new generation be able to fix the indifference of the world, or is the problem rooted far too deep?
Read it slower and louder.
Will the new generation be able to fix the indifference of the world, or is the problem rooted far too deep?
Okay, good. Paco, what's an issue for you?
Indifference.
Okay. Isabel?
Kind of same direction with the new generation.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, Adriana? Oh, that's cool. If you don't have, if there's nothing else that's standing out to you, is there not? Okay. Francisco? Six. Okay. All right. Is there anybody else who has something that stood out to you as an issue? Yeah, Clinton. Too deep. Far too deep. Okay. Oh. I just feel like a failure when I don't get the bowl to go the way I want it to. All right. Yeah, Isabel, you got another one? World. Okay. See, you got different, y'all are using many of the same words, but I guarantee they don't mean the same thing. Not always. They're close enough that we kind of get the general gist of it, right? All right. Andrew, I didn't give you a chance to tell us why this was your problem. Did I?
Well, where I was grateful for were like my heritage, music, and traveling. But all of those seem to have different views from different people based on their heritage. You know,
Okay.
there's people that travel to different countries and they still expect the same treatment they have here. And they'd rather have very good stuff before they go out there. They're like, oh, we speak my language. I'm here as a vacationist. Like, you should
Oh,
go to
shit.
Italy,
Yeah.
English. I don't like the way this food is cooked. Like stuff like that, you know. They don't really pay attention to how much different a culture can be once they go out.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I forgot to ask you about your reflection. Y'all got to realize I'm nearly 60. I don't remember most of the things I do besides having ADHD and ASD. I'm old. So, you know, squirrel. Good. How do you mean new generation?
Basically just the young kids right now, they seem to be like very
So when you say young kids right now, how old are you?
What's
You're 28. Okay, so you're approaching half my age. No, actually, you are half my age. Okay, so you're half my age, and you're talking about kids these days.
Yeah.
Welcome to being old. So technically, you're a millennial, right?
Yes.
You're like the very end of the millennials. So you're really talking about Zoomers, some of whom are in this room,
Probably yes.
like Isabel.
I mean, the only way that I see it is like
Isabel, this is your problem to fix, damn it. Anyway.
I mean, not just her, like generations after that. You know?
No, it's totally right. I mean, there's a really nice, this brings up something really kind of, I think, important for y'all to really consider, especially since people live to be so old nowadays. There's something called coeval generations. This coeval here is not evil, bad. This is like a valuative, right? Coeval generations, which means coeval generations. And what that means is there are people alive right now who fought in World War I. One person will see that, right? But then they're all, the people who survived the Depression, people who fought through World War II, and then you start getting into the generation of labels. People who fought World War II, and the boomers, and the Gen Xers, and the millennials, and the Zoomers, Generation Z, right? And all of these generations live side by side with each other. But all of them they all have their own generational way of looking at it, right? Primarily, this is part of those material conditions I was talking about. You're raised a certain way. I'm lucky enough to have been born in a period of years, 1963 to 1965 is right between the boomers and the Gen X. So I have habits that are somewhat like the boomers, but a little more like the Gen X, right? Which is the reason why my brother, who's a full-on boomer, irritated the fuck out of me. Right? Because he's 15 years older. That's a big difference, man. I was born in 64, by the way. So this is a really kind of important thing. So for you, new generation would be the generations after yours, but it would be the youth of today. And by saying this, I want you to admit and say in front of everyone that you no longer are a youth. Okay. All right. You're old. You accept that. All right. So how else do you mean? How do you mean indifference?
Basically, lack of interest to learn, or lack of
Okay. So a lack of interest. All right. That's good. Now, how do you mean fix?
Educated.
Okay.
Having open minds, like don't be so close-minded to your own.
All right. And we also had far too deep. Can I be pedantic for a second? Do you know what that means? Pedantic means that you like to teach, but you never stop, so you're always being an asshole teaching people shit. It should be deeply. Okay, so anyway, far too deeply. How? What do you mean by that?
Like you said, then you have people being raised by different generations.
Okay.
Have their own beliefs and their teachings, and they teach them all the way since they're like babies.
Okay.
A lot of people actually just stick to that type of teaching rather than learning their own stuff.
So you kind of mean brainwashed?
I guess systematic.
Okay. Systemic bias / maybe you're also talking about sedimented. It's just so far down. You gotta dig through the sediment to find where it's at to pull it out, right? Okay. All right, good. All right, and then world. How do you mean world? Okay, so for you, world is humanity. That's cool. Actually, the word world in Anglo-Germanic languages derives from a word that means like the old man. So that's it. Okay, so good. Paco? Now don't forget, we're gonna be coming back, and I'm gonna go through with the folks who came up with these today and ask each of you to figure out what you think these questions have in common. All right, and I'll try to figure out a way where I can get most of them on the board at the same time so that we can do that pretty easily. But Paco, how is it P-A-K-C-O? I see, when I put that little thing in your book, I misspelled it. Spelled it Paco. Did you see that? Okay, Paco. All right, what's your question?
Why are we / all / you comfortable with our / your situation?
Wait a minute. I asked you not to go back and redo your question. Is this actually how your question? Okay. All right. I believe you. Okay. Why are we /
all
/
you
I feel like I'm being attacked. Comfortable with
our / your
okay.
situation.
All right. Oh. Interesting. All right. So first, first read the question again out loud.
Wait, you said read it out loud again?
Yeah, read it out loud one more time.
I'll take out the
You can take out the slash. You can just
Yeah, I got it.
All right.
Why are we all you comfortable with your situation?
Okay, read it slower.
Why are we all you comfortable with your situation?
Okay, and read it louder and slower.
Why are
There's always one answer.
we all you comfortable with our / your situation?
Okay, cool. Now reflect for us. Why is this your question?
Why is this my question? So the three things I put was music / art, love, and growth / learning.
You love slashes.
I definitely.
You're a
do.
slasher.
I can't.
You starve your own slasher brains.
I can't just go with like one thing. You know, there's so much intricacies that I have to, add things to it. And even the thing that was inside of my circle was inexperience / inauthenticity. So
That's interesting.
with those things being said, I think it just comes to being comfortable. It's really just like living in like this simulation where we're just like in autopilot mode constantly and never really reflecting much like
Okay.
we're doing right now.
All right, good. So, Andrew, what's at issue for you in this question other than the slashes? We can kind of leave those. Slash and burn. Situation. And remember, if you don't have, if there's nothing at issue for you, you don't have to, Isabel. Okay. Francisco.
Why?
Why? I'm going for the interrogative pronouns. Yes. Okay. And Adrian? Nothing. With. That's fine. Anybody else? No? Okay. So, situation.
Situation,
Mhm.
I mean like routine / lifestyle. Let's keep going with slashes. Routine / lifestyle.
I'm going to use a comma.
Okay. That's cool.
Lifestyle. You've already made me be a pedant once, and now you're making me do it again. It makes me uncomfortable. All right. Routines, comma, certainly slash. Routine or lifestyle. Okay. How do you mean comfortable?
Comfortable, I mean satisfied with.
Okay. All right. And how do you mean why? How do you why?
If you don't adjust it, then you're satisfied with it. I mean, why not? I feel like
It appears that Paco / Andrew are having a debate. How do you mean why? Which is good because that's why we want to do this. I'm just, fucking around. But. You could go, I have no idea.
yeah, just how come or whatever.
Or how come, all right.
Last question.
How come, why for? All right, and the last is mine, with. How do you mean with?
In connection with. I guess I'm using the
You
same.
can't
so
use
in
the
con-
same word
in
for the
con-
definition.
In connection.
Okay, in connection. I think what you want to say here is in connection to, actually.
Yes.
Okay, all right, cool. And now comes trying to figure out what all these fucking have in common. So that's gonna be a little harder since it's in the kind of format it's in, but I think we can do it. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna slowly read carefully with some enunciation each question, and then I'm gonna go back to let Francisco and everyone try to figure out a common element. Okay, so our questions are, how will technology make us dehumanize each other more and more in the future? How do we become aware of the ego? How does desiring affect the world? Will the new generation be able to fix the indifference of the world, or is the problem rooted far too deeply? Okay. Oops. Had a Greek question mark there for a second. Okay. And then why are we all you comfortable with your situation? Okay. Francisco? All right, so now we're looking for the commonalities. So what we're going to do here is you just kind of like throw them out. Like, what do you think they have in common?
I do not know.
Okay.
Maybe, gaining knowledge.
Okay. Maybe. I was going to go ahead and, I was actually going to allow you to say I don't know, but since you said gaining knowledge, I put it there. All right. Isabel?
I think they're all about unconsciousness and connecting we're not aware of.
Conscious, unawareness. Okay. Have you been reading Freud lately? Never mind. Freud, Sigmund Freud.
Oh, no.
No, I'm just kind of wondering because you're really on this unconscious thing, so I kind of want to delve into the unconscious a little bit. Okay. Adriana,
I think they're all asking for personal perspective.
personal perspective. Okay. Personal perspective, though, on what?
What you
Okay. Like, what's up? What's up? What you believe? All right. And Andrew.
We was talking about human interaction, like throughout the world, basically, humanized, coming together.
So basically, human interactivity. Okay. And then Paco, how do you see the 5 questions?
Internal, external struggle.
I commend you for not saying slash. Internal,
You took all of them.
and you also use a hyphen, external struggle. Okay. So when you say that, actually, you mean the struggle between the in and the out? Or do you mean,
Like the internal struggle of like
yeah.
your self-awareness and the external struggle of others.
Okay, anybody else want to give it a try? Lois, what do you think they have in common? Do you mind if I put your name here? So it's okay? Okay. What do you think they have in
I would say they all have to do with finding the comfortability.
common? Okay, so they all have to do with finding comfort, finding comfortability in struggle. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Quentin. It's okay with putting your name?
This is gonna be long, but I feel they all are asking questions about how the negative affect their lives negatively, which is true, but doesn't also question how positive feels affect lives.
Okay. So basically, you're saying what their relation is, how the negative affects us, but not necessarily the positive. Okay. Good. All right. Anybody else? Yes.
change.
Melanie. Did I remember? I did? Okay. I don't know why. I look at you and my mind goes blank. You'd be great for my meditation. Melanie, how did you say change? Okay. Okay, good. Anybody else? All right. Here's the real trick. Is there a way to make these 5 questions 1 question? This is the sort of thing that works out way better on board than it does with the computer. You can at least chain them together with slashes. It's like all 5 questions with a slash between them. Yeah, you could do that. I like this, actually. Y'all have done a really good job. Even, considering that I didn't remember half of my own method. That's, most of the time. It took me a second to get reacclimated. The major thing here is for the people who shared today to go back and use the critique in the back and forth to refine your question, to repose your question, right? And then also think about how the questions that the other people asked might inform a better question for you, might help you inform a better question, right? So let's look at my question. Let's put it over here. How do we educate each other? Now, I will tell you that, I will tell you, it's a great question, great question. How do we educate each other? And why is this my issue? Well, I'm concerned with ignorance. All right? Very concerned. That's the reason I choose. And I feel like it's a Socratic notion that Plato kind of runs with himself, that actually there is no such thing as an evil person. They're only ignorant. And actually the Socratic idea is no one does evil but from ignorance. No one does evil but from ignorance. Intentional or unintentional? So obviously, if it's an unintentional thing you've done, it's from ignorance because you don't even know you've done it. Right? But when you do something where you hurt someone, why would you hurt someone on purpose? Yeah, there'd be a lot of reasons. But Clint?
Oh, yes.
I thought you raised your hand. James, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, well, I did. Because I was.
Are you raising your hand?
Maybe we expect a certain outcome with their other relations.
Okay, good.
Unintentional. That's what I was trying to say. Hopefully you didn't miss what I said. Intentional and unintentional.
Oh, no, I didn't. Intentional ignorance, I'm saying, is when you obviously set out to commit harm.
Yeah.
Unintentional, by definition, is ignorant, right? Yeah, that's right. And you're saying there might be an emotional reaction because they didn't get the outcome they expected, or?
Well, maybe they will want to understand about
Okay, good, right? Like, why does somebody break into someone else's home and steal an Xbox? You'd say, well, where's the ignorance in that? Right? Well, where is the ignorance? Francisco, where's the ignorance in someone's breaking into your house and stealing your Xbox? They don't know you got a shotgun. I don't know.
I was gonna say, I don't think they're gonna get away with it.
Right.
I don't think they're not gonna get caught, I guess.
Right. Okay. So they think they're not going to get caught. So that's one reason they do it. But why would you break into someone's house just to steal an Xbox? I mean, what's the newest thing? Somebody tell me the newest thing.
PS5.
What?
PS5.
A PS5. Why would you break into someone's house to steal a PS5? Jay?
can't get it by your own means, so you take it.
You don't like have the money to buy one. Right. Okay. Why would that be? Why would Socrates think that someone doing that is acting from ignorance?
I think that one of the things will offer temporary satisfaction.
Yes, because the thing you're going after, which you'll get, and will occupy your attention for 2 or 3 days, maybe a week, you suddenly has a diminishing return. And now, on top of everything else, you have to worry that the cops might be looking for you. But you got to play a game for 5 days. You know, and so I think that's a really important aspect, right? The diminishing return suddenly can make you aware. Oh, I fucked up. Why did I not think about this? It's not really worth it. right? Most crime is done from a place of ignorance because it's done, I want to get this now. And then you realize, whoa, that was stupid. And it can end up ruining your whole life, right? You ever hear about?
Yeah. So I was gonna say ignorance, like them doing that intentionally could also be like for money, like because they believe like, oh, this is the only way
Yes,
possible for me.
get money. Now, here's something really kind of interesting from that perspective. Why, if you do it for money, would it be ignorant? Melanie? Isabel?
Because you're not aware of the fact that money is a means.
Oh, really good. Money is merely a means to an end. And so doing something to steal a means that will not last and that will not, I mean, it's one thing. Here's the other deal. This is when scale really matters, right? Cecil Rhodes stealing half the diamonds in Rhodesia, in Zimbabwe and South Africa. That's high level. That's high level shit. And he, still have scholarships named after him and colleges named after him. And it's only been 40 years since they changed the name of the country he colonized, right? From Rhodesia to Zimbabwe. When you're on that high level scale, you don't usually get caught quite the same. But does that mean you're still not acting out of ignorance? No. What's his ignorance that he's acting? Africans are subhuman. The British have a right to anything that they can get a hold of. Now, why is that an ignorant position? Because no human has a right to other people's stuff just because they happen to have the power, or they happen to be white, or they happen to have an army or whatever. Yeah, they can take it, right? So the Socratic idea of ignorance is really quite broad, and it actually makes its way into Christianity and Islam through a circuitous route of the fact that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the Abrahamic religions, do not have a lot of philosophical explication in their holy texts, right? There are like all these things that are said, but then you have to interpret it, you have to fill in holes, you have to try to make things seem like it makes more sense. And in the process of doing that, all three of the Abrahamic religions drew from Plato and Aristotle. Because that was the only reason that Texans today believe the soul is immortal has nothing to do with the Bible. It has everything to do with Plato. The Bible does not teach the soul is immortal. It does not teach that. Okay? The Bible doesn't actually say a hell of a lot about hell. It doesn't say what happens after death. And one of the reasons it doesn't is because the ancient Hebrews believed you died and that's that. It was only as time went by that they began to develop these ideas that maybe you would live beyond death. Or there might be this thing that the late Jewish thinkers and early Christian thinkers called resurrection. Right? And even that is dependent on a certain reading of Plato and Aristotle to shore up the fact that the texts simply don't explain anything. It's not the point, right? If you stop and you think about it, Holy Scripture's job is not to explain anything. Humans, however, are very skeptical. So even people who thump a Bible and they got an answer for everything, they don't realize how much of their answers are actually informed by 2,000 years of using Plato and Aristotle to help shore up what doesn't make any sense to anybody outside of their religion. And sometimes doesn't make sense to people in their religion. Right? Okay, so I went off on that little thing, but the point was to get to this, that in all three of these religions, in some way, shape, or form, they adopt the Socratic position and the Platonic position that good is real and substantial, And evil is fake and nothing but a shadow. Notice, if a person claims to have knowledge but they're ignorant, that's just a shadow. It's phony. It's fake. Fake news. Right? The good has substance. It's real. Flesh is substantial. That's one of the reasons later Judaism, Christianity, Islam all have a place for the resurrection. Because flesh is real. Touch it. And because it's made by God, it's good. Right? So all of this is brought in primarily to all three, primarily to Christianity and Islam by Augustine of Hippo, who was an African thinker from North Africa, and who is responsible actually for calling together in Africa the Council of Carthage, which was a meeting of bishops from the Christian world in 430. And at the Council of Carthage, they finalized the Bible. Look at this date. The Bible was not finalized until 430. And Augustine was a Platonist. And he's probably the most influential person on Western Christianity, really all Christianity, but definitely Western Christianity, after St. Paul. In fact, let me say something really controversial. In Christianity, the order of importance of who's had the most effect is St. Paul, St. Augustine, and Jesus. In fact, St. Augustine is so important as an African thinker. He's the person whose philosophy gives us our understanding of time. That's pretty fucking important if you think about it. Based on his understanding of the Bible. Well, one of the things that Augustine promoted at this council, but also throughout his works, was the notion that evil is a shadow. And no one, and so evil doesn't have, there's no such thing as substantial. Evil's not real in the sense of this. It's not to say people don't do evil things. This goes directly to this notion of ignorance. Right? Ignorance is to ignore. So if you also start from that position, isn't it the case that someone who goes into your house and takes your PS5 is ignoring social standards? Not just not thinking ahead, they decided to ignore any boundaries. Why do humans have boundaries? No, there's plenty. Say Andrew's talking about the idea that most Americans, when they go places, just don't have any boundaries, or they expect the same boundaries wherever they go, right? Why do we have boundaries? Matthew, why do we have boundaries?
To protect our possessions, for instance.
Okay, good. And what is your greatest possession? What is the thing that you possess that's the most important to you? And not material. It's not just the thing, but what is your greatest possession? But if you didn't have it, you wouldn't do it. That's a good question. You're studying biochemistry, right? Or organic chemistry. That's the chemistry line. Okay. How about that? Would you be if you were dead? Your greatest problem is yourself, is your body. Right? Now, I'll give you, in this regard, then, how often these questions that were asked have to do with people not owning their life. How much do these questions have to do with the failure to own their life? Remember what I said Wednesday? That this is about learning how to narrate your own story. Right? So how much do these questions have to do with the failure to own your life? How much do these questions have to do with the failure of people to recognize the boundaries that respect lives, people, each other, right? So we have boundaries to protect our property. Ultimately, our property is always, in the sense of material property, is an extension of our own life, right? And I told y'all a week and a half ago, all of our laws, actually, they reduce us to material property, right? They reduce us to material property. Yeah.
I'm gonna cut you off.
That's fine.
My
I'm utterly ignorant of where you're going.
My first year in college was in Houston, and I had some roommates who were doing college. They used to argue every time. And 8 of us in there, and 6 of them, they went to honors college, so they could argue, bring evidence about things.
Yeah.
And one of the arguments was humans are inherently evil.
Yeah.
So listening to this, you telling me evil is a shadow. And one of the evidence they came up with, the reason why humans are inherently evil is because religiously we are born with original sin.
That's another problem with St. Augustine.
And the Bible is, as you said in 4:30, finalized through Plato's.
Well, it's finalized through, it's finalized, and that Plato doesn't have anything to do with finalizing the Bible, but Augustine is sort of culminating about 300 years of argument about what makes the Bible. And they finally come up with a list. But Augustine also is the person who's responsible for the notion of original sin. That didn't exist before 400.
So,
Yeah.
how would he come up?
Even in his idea, well, this is the other issue. It's such a refined argument. You can get lost in trying to understand it and then misapply it. His argument is that all humanity in the world fell in the Garden of Eden when Eve and Adam ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that stain is born into every person. I want you to recognize this. The stain of original sin does not mean people are evil. That's utterly taking Augustine's stuff and going the wrong direction, right? Because one other thing that Augustine says is, he agrees with the notion that to be born human is to be born with all of the prerequisites to do good. And that it's only because we let our will and our training slack, or the training of our will slack, that we will things that are bad things out of it. Right? The idea of original sin is not people are evil. The idea of original sin is that because of this disconnect, we have to turn willingly towards God because there was a willing turn away from God. That's it. people take the original sin and they take the idea that Satan is real in the sense of this person who's fighting against God and trying to destroy humanity, which is also a late invention of late Judaism, about 50 years, 100 years before Jesus was born. And they take that idea and they think, oh, humans are just evil. Look at all the evil in the world. Because humans are evil. No, humans are evil. Humans are ignorant. Which is funny because the reason we have that stain, supposedly, I'm not saying we do, right? It's because we ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Have you ever thought about that yet? God stopped them from being able to eat from the tree of life because that would allow them to live forever. But only they needed to eat from the tree of life because they'd eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Because before they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they weren't supposed to die. They were supposed to live forever. So there was no reason for them to, right? And so when God stopped them from doing that, it was because when El or Yahweh stopped them from doing that, it was because they wanted to stop Adam and Eve from, or the first humans, from not only having this power to tell the difference between good and bad, but the power to live forever. And really, this is an important thing. Evil is relative. Even in the Bible. It's relative. Right? The ability to make the distinction between good/evil, right? To make that distinction, it automatically sets you up, in a sense, for a kind of failure. Because the evil is always going to be relative to what makes you unhappy, makes you irritated, makes you dissatisfied, makes you, right? Your friend's girlfriend has some weird need to wake everyone in the apartment up at 6:30 while she gets ready to go on her run. That evil woman.
Running at 6:30 in the morning.
What's that? Oh, what's that all about? We didn't even go to bed until 6. So, right? It's relative. This sort of thing is relative. And in fact, it's relative in this way. If you think about it, what Augustine says about evil is a shadow, what Socrates says about these things, it's relative actually to what has substance. Right? Why is there a shadow? Because it's light. And the shadow is relative to what's standing between the light. Yeah? In the shadow. So when I ask this question, how do we educate each other? And I bring it out of ignorance. I bring it because I see the ignorance of it. This word is doing a lot of work. Because in so many ways, the stuff we normally would attribute to people being bad, or people having an evil nature, or people having a bad character, or whatever, is an ultimate ignorance. Right? Something that another philosopher says that's highly important for a lot of these questions that were asked today is the fact that when you talk to someone, and we'll see a variation of this actually in the Plato as we're reading it, that when you talk to a person, right, you cannot know the motives of a person from their actions any more than you can know the cause of something in nature from its effect. You can't reason from an effect to a cause and be 100% sure. You also can't reason from the actions of a person to their motives. Despite the fact, this is very much the way we've organized our justice system. So right now, what's going on with Kyle Rittenhouse? What's happening in that trial, right? Is the idea we have his actions, we even have him saying shit. But is that really the motive? So the prosecution has to prove a motive, right? The problem is, and the thing that we'll get to in the Republic when we get to, I think, book 2 of the Republic, there's a beautiful, one of the great things about the Republic is it provides us with about 7 of the great metaphors and analogies that Plato invented to help people think about education and think about interacting with other people. And one of the stories is something called the Ring of Gyges. This will sound familiar. A guy is walking along. An earthquake happens and a chasm opens up. Inside the chasm, he sees a statue of a man on a horse with a ring. And he takes the ring and he puts it on and suddenly realizes nobody can see it. He's invisible. Right? He put the ring on backwards like that. When he turns the ring back this way, people can see him. Well, what do you think he starts doing? He starts having sex with the king's wife. He starts stealing from the treasury. He plots and plans, right? But this is a metaphor for Plato. The entirety of the Republic is actually how to educate yourself. It's not a politics. It's called the Republic, but it's not a politics. Everybody always misreads it as a politics. It's actually a psychology. It's about the structure of the human soul, and it's about how it is the case that you cannot see into the soul of another person. That's what this metaphor is. When you're talking to somebody, right? When you see the face, the smiles, the niceness, I'm not saying go out and distrust her. I'm simply saying we have no fucking idea what they're thinking. Inside here is closed, right? So same thing here, right? This is why this one thinker says that you can see a bunch of effects, but you can never really get fully to the cause of the effects. You can see a bunch of actions, but you can never really get to why the person did it. This probably is the reason so many people are fascinated with serial killers. The best serial killer films and books are the ones that basically say, I have no fucking reason for killing people. I just like to do it. My mother didn't beat me. My father didn't molest me. I was a popular kid, but I just like to kill people. In the computer. All right. So what I want y'all to do who didn't do the exercise, we're going to spend time on Wednesday going over the first book of the Republic. Start reading, right? Do what I said. Read the liner notes real fast, then go back and start reading the text. I realize it's going to be a little boring. Just give it a try, okay? We'll go over book 1 of the Republic. Those of you who did the exercise today for us, thank you very much for doing it. Let's give a round of applause for participation. What I'd like for y'all to do, though, is repose your question based on today. Like, rethink it a little bit. Like, how you would possibly make it a better question. Okay? I'll see y'all on Wednesday. Don't forget you got something to do tomorrow before 11:59 p.m.